This is a story I actually experienced myself. It's drawn out, disorganized, and doesn't even have a punchline. I have a friend, E, who I've known for about 10 years. She has an extremely strong sixth sense. Just how strong is it? Ever since she was little, she used to say things that sounded like prophecies. Word spread about that, and people would travel from far away just to see her. Those people usually wanted her to find their missing children. E would take one look at a photo, and she'd know where the missing person was. And she would actually be right. But that was only if the person was already deceased. Back when she was little, she didn't grasp just how heavy the news she was delivering was, so she'd casually say things like, "They're buried under concrete." As she got older, she realized how brutal her answers were, and she started refusing to help people find missing persons. After that, she pretended as though her ability had disappeared. In reality, she constantly sensed the presence of spirits lurking all around her. I met E in junior high school. My first impression was, wow, there's an insanely gorgeous girl here. By the way, E is a quarter English. She looks like a mix of Nozomi Sasaki and Keiko Kitagawa. She was so incredibly pretty that I suggested she try getting into show business when we were in high school. She easily passed an audition for a certain major agency, laughs. But she didn't have the motivation for it, and she quit after about half a year. From then on, as a regular high school student, E often hung out with me. We were always buying snacks together after school. One time, the two of us were eating some snacks on an outside stairway attached to some facility, and an elderly woman came down from above and spoke to us. She seemed to have trouble walking. "Lots of people around today, some kind of event going on?" the elderly woman asked. We looked down at the street. It was crowded with people. There was a festival that day. Normally, I'm pretty shy, so I'd always leave these kinds of interactions to E, but this time, E wasn't having any of it. She turned away, showing no sign of wanting to talk to the old lady at all. With no other choice, I answered in her place. When I explained that there was a festival, the old lady nodded. "Oh, that explains why there are so many people." She smiled, and little by little, she made her way down the stairs, dragging her foot. Meanwhile, E said nothing the entire time. As soon as the old woman disappeared from sight, E finally spoke. "That lady died ages ago." I was stunned. I had clearly seen her, and I had even talked with her. "You've gotta be kidding me," I asked, half in disbelief. E was stone-faced. "If you think I'm lying, go down those stairs and see. She's gone by now." Half convinced, I went down the stairs, but sure enough, the old woman was nowhere to be seen. I even went down to the first floor and looked around, but I couldn't find her anywhere. That staircase was almost like a spiral staircase. If I remember correctly, you could only get on or off the staircase from the first, fifth, or seventh floor. It wasn't made in a way that let you enter the building between those floors. We were sitting somewhere around the fifth floor. There's no way that old lady, dragging her foot, could have made it down to the first floor so quickly. When I got back to E, she was munching on a Pocky stick, looking like she knew exactly what had happened. Probably nothing to worry about. She just popped out because there were so many people around. She's not a harmful spirit. So why didn't you talk to her, E? Because if she'd realized I could see her, even harmless spirits might get attached to me and start following me around. But I talked to her normally. "You'll be fine, don't worry." That was the first time I had ever seen a ghost. I always thought ghosts appeared with resentment, looking scary and sinister, so I was kind of taken aback at how natural it had been. They just show up, all casual-like. I feel sorry for her, still dragging her foot around in the afterlife. Nah, the ones I usually see are way worse than that. Way more gruesome. I felt a bit embarrassed that I'd found even that nice-looking old woman's spirit scary. And I also realized just how different E's everyday reality was. Afterwards, I never saw another spirit, and I managed to graduate from high school without incident. After graduating, E got an office job. I stayed in my parents' home and worked part-time. We were both busy, me with part-time work and E with her job, so we didn't get to see each other much. Still, we kept in touch occasionally by email or phone. I first heard that he had quit our office job to start working at night a year or so after we graduated. Apparently, it was because her father had been laid off. On top of that, E's sister, who had been married young, had come back home, and her younger brother, who was surprisingly handsome and looked a lot like he, had become a shut-in for some reason. E worked herself to the bone to support her family. Meanwhile, I started to feel ashamed that I was basically freeloading off my parents and doing part-time jobs. I began job hunting, but I kept failing interviews. In the end, I got a position as a semi-regular staff member in a retail-related job. The workplace was a store in a spot where there had been a murder a few years prior. That incident had been in the news at the time, pretty big headlines. While I say retail-related, it wasn't exactly that. If you search, you can find out what the incident was, so I can't clearly say what the actual job was here. Because it was at a location with a history, once I started working there, I began hearing all kinds of stories. Like, the old store manager disappeared without a trace, or all the employees kept getting sick. But nothing happened to me, so I kept working without paying it any mind. Then about a year after I started. That day, it had been raining since morning. Only a handful of customers showed up, so it was basically dead. By afternoon, there were no customers at all. The manager and one of the staff had gone out for a delivery, so I was manning the store alone. It was dim outside because of the rain, giving me a bad vibe. I was at the register, doing some paperwork to pass the time, when I heard footsteps. Thinking a customer had come in without me noticing, I called out in my best book-off style, letting my voice echo through the store, "Welcome." But when I looked around to greet whoever was there, I saw no one. Maybe I'd imagined it. I went back to the register and resumed my work. Then I heard footsteps again. But still no one there. This happened a few more times, and I started to feel seriously scared. Then, the footsteps came once more. This time, I distinctly heard them right behind me. At first, it was just a slow tap. 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 But then it turned into a hurried patter, and soon, it was a thud like someone was running toward me. I started freaking out and froze in terror. That's when I saw a glimpse of a familiar color, our staff jacket. The manager had just come back from the delivery. The moment I felt relieved, the footsteps vanished. I nervously turned around. There was no one there. Something wrong? The manager, oblivious, looked puzzled. Trying to keep my cool, I told him, "Oh, it's nothing." But my voice was trembling, I'm sure. Not long after, the manager apparently got involved in some problem and was demoted. Other staff members also started quitting one by one, and the store's lineup of workers completely changed. I ended up being the oldest employee there. The new manager was fresh out of college, still figuring things out. Around the same time he arrived, a new part-timer named Kay joined. I heard Kay had been a shut-in or close to it until recently, so he was pretty socially awkward. Management assumed he'd be terrible with customers, so they had him mostly help with deliveries or do office work. But once he started, Kay turned out to be interesting. He showed me lots of anime and manga I didn't know about. As he got used to everyone, he brightened up. Eventually, he even learned to work the register and handle customers. One day, everyone went out on deliveries, leaving just me and Kay in the store. Kay was doing something in the office. That day, we had a lot of customers, and the register line was getting long. I was struggling to keep up by myself, so when there was finally a break in the flow, I went over to the office store and called out for Kay. "Hey, Kay, could you come out here for a sec?" No response from inside. The top third of the door was frosted glass, so you could vaguely see what was going on. I could see someone in a staff jacket moving around inside, so I was sure Kay was in there. Maybe he didn't hear me, so I tried opening the door and talking to him directly. Click, click. He'd locked it from the inside. What's he doing in there at a time like this? I got mad and started jiggling the knob, calling out loudly for Kay. "Kay? What are you doing? I need some help at the register." Just then, a voice behind me said, What are you doing?" It was Kay. Wait, wasn't he supposed to be in the office? He said he'd been out back cleaning. So, who was in the office just now, wearing the staff jacket? Where did they go? At that moment, the door that wouldn't open before suddenly opened, and inside, there was no one. I was certain I had seen someone moving around in there wearing our staff uniform. That's why I thought Kay was inside. But Kay had been in the back the whole time. There's no window in the office, so the only way in or out is through that door. So where did the person I saw go? A chill ran down my spine. But we got busy with customers again, so there was no time to dwell on what had happened. It remained unresolved. Kay didn't appear to be lying, and it was too scary to think about it further, so I tried not to. A few days later, I came into work and saw that someone had left flowers at the back entrance. It was the anniversary of the murder that had happened years ago. Apparently, every year on that date, the victim's family comes at night and quietly places flowers there. Inside the office, there's a small altar. Usually, the family leaves the flowers on that altar. A while later, the flowers wilted, but nobody on staff would throw them out. It seemed like no one wanted to touch them. So I decided to remove them myself. Just as I reached for the flowers. "Don't you dare throw them away!" Kay shouted. I'd never heard him raise his voice like that. He normally speaks in a low mumble, so I was really startled and pulled my hand back in a panic. Had I done something wrong? I'd never seen awkward Kay get genuinely angry. Sorry. What's the matter?" I apologized. "But..." "Huh? What do you mean?" Kay looked totally confused. "You just yelled, didn't you?" "No, I didn't say anything." Kay seemed completely unaware that he had shouted at me. Maybe I misheard him? Anyway, I decided to just leave the flowers alone a little longer. After that, I kept working there. I had started dating the manager, and I was enjoying our little on-the-job romance. When everyone else went home, we'd stay behind, close out the registers, chat about work. It was fun. But one day, closing time came, and the manager was still out on a delivery. It was just me alone in the store even after closing. That had happened before, and I hated being alone, so I usually passed the time chatting on the store's phone with a friend until he came back. This time, I decided to call E, hadn't talked to her in a while. "Hey, I'm still at work by myself, bored. Keep me company." E agreed, and we chatted about our high school days for a while. But soon, she got quieter, and her voice grew darker. Worried, I asked what was wrong. You're at work right now, aren't you?" "Yeah, I am." "Get out of there right now. Hurry." E practically screamed at me to leave the store immediately. Luckily, I had the store key, so I quickly closed up and left. I rushed home, not understanding a thing. I told my boyfriend, the manager, that something had come up and I had to go. Then I picked up the phone to ask E what was going on, but she called me first. "What happened back there?" I tried to reply, but she cut me off. "That place is really bad news, and while we were on the phone, I kept hearing horrible static, and your voice sounded so weird, it sounded like someone else was speaking in your place." She told me that if I kept working there, something terrible would happen to me, and I should quit right away. I was torn. I trusted E, but leaving abruptly would inconvenience everyone else, and it'd be tough to find a new job in such a rural area. After thinking it over, I was still unsure, and I decided to go in again the next day. The following morning, I opened my front door, and there was E, waiting. I hadn't seen her in ages, but why show up so early? She suddenly dropped to her knees outside my house. "Please, I'm begging you, don't go back there." She was crying. Thinking back, it was the first time I'd seen E cry. I was shocked and panicked. In the end, faced with E's desperation, I called in to take the day off. And with her persuading me all day, I ended up quitting my job entirely. Thanks to E, I found a new job soon enough. Once I'd settled in, I happened to run into one of the people I used to work with at that store. That person had also quit. They said that even after I left, there were still plenty of incidents. Employees got sick, had nervous breakdowns, or got into accidents. E had been worried that I'd end up in a similar situation, which was why she pleaded with me so earnestly to quit. Several years have passed since then. I got married to a man I met through someone at my new job, and we moved into a new place. E came to visit us recently. She was really happy to meet my husband. "You'll be fine now, and from here on, he'll protect you." By then, I had already realized something. Why would E, so pretty and popular with the guys, always stick around a quiet person like me? Why would she choose a high school at my level when she could have gone somewhere far more challenging? Why did she quit the talent agency she'd finally gotten into, despite having said she wanted to be a model? Since junior high, whenever I went out somewhere alone, E always insisted on tagging along. She didn't care about Visual Kei music, yet she'd come with me to shows, or go shopping, or even to the hair salon. She just kept me company, matching all of my interests. It was all to protect me. From the day we first met, E had noticed something that was clinging to me. And because that thing drew other malicious entities, E was always shielding me. According to her, now that I was with my husband, I no longer needed that protection. E, relieved of her duty, looked almost liberated. Currently, E is still working nights, but she's also studying exorcism properly under a genuine mentor. She wants to help as many people as possible. Apparently, it's an incredibly grueling process. Now that she's consciously using an ability she had been using unconsciously until now, she says she often loses control of her power. Things she doesn't want to see might appear in her room, or strange entities gather around her, which takes a heavy toll on her body. She's been hospitalized many times. Even so, she keeps pushing forward. I'm sure I'll never be able to repay her. I truly want to thank whatever higher power brought Ia into my life.